Welcome to session 2 of Sowing Seeds of Climate Hope. And today we're going to start plunging right into why there are real reasons for hope. And it's because we have the technology. We can solve this problem now. And we're going to hit the biggest area to solve right now, which is the energy sector. Conversely, it's also the easiest area to solve because it's in place. You don't have to take the energy with you. All right? And so today we're going to hit 4 of the technologies: onshore wind, solar, geothermal, wind turbines, and offshore wind. And those technologies by themselves will get us to 85% green renewable energy with a minimum investment. In fact, we're going to save money by doing it. So it's the old 85-15 rule. 85% of the benefit, 15% of the cost, and in fact, we're going to save money. So dig into these, realize there's even more savings that can happen. And after you're done with watching this video, take the time to listen to each other following the discussion guide that we included. I think you'll find that there are real reasons for hope that you can talk about with each other and with your neighbors and with your community. Enjoy. We're going to focus on wind, specifically wind turbines on land. Let's start a little scripture. In fact, we're going to go right to the start of the Bible, Genesis 1, and listen to the poet describe how God made creation. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and the darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. God, pictured as wind, at loose in the world. Let's take a moment, though, to talk about why we're doing this. We have this image in our head that the earth is so big that human beings can't possibly hurt it. But scientists tell us that, in fact, the earth is small, it's fragile. In fact, if you look at the globe and you use the globe as a model for the earth, the biosphere, the portion of the earth that makes life possible, the soil, the water, the air, is such a thin layer, it's like saran wrap on a globe. And that's what we're destroying with our pollution. Saran wrap. That's how fragile we are. But you know, going back to that reading from Genesis, it was written in Hebrew. And the Hebrew word for wind is also the same word for breath and for spirit. And so evoking that image, that wind, the power to generate, is also what we breathe, and it's the Spirit of God at work in the world. No wonder we're kicking off our episodes of looking at technology with looking at wind. You and I know that humans have been harnessing the wind for eons. You know, we've used it to power windmills, to pump out dikes in Holland, or to go after deep well water in Texas. We've used it on boats to power them across seas. We use them as sails. We've used them as balloons to ride across the land. But what's really amazing is in the last couple of decades, we have gone after generating electricity by wind with marvelous new technologies, technology that keeps improving and growing all the time. Right now, there's over 300,000 wind turbines across the globe. And as we keep improving the technology of how high they can be and the efficiency of the wind blades themselves to harvest the wind, well, we've doubled the places on the earth where you can effectively use wind energy just by our changes in design. Wind energy right now has the ability to power 40 times more than what we need in total electricity if we were to go after it fully. In fact, in the USA, 3 states alone have enough wind capacity potential, if we put wind farms there, Kansas, North Dakota, and Texas, to meet all of the electricity needs in the United States. And there's another benefit. You can get dual use out of the land because wind turbines have a very small footprint. And so if you ever go past a wind farm, farm's a good word for it because they can grow crops right on the same land, or they can have herds on the same land with the wind turbines. Yeah, I know there's the argument that, well, the wind doesn't always blow. Well, maybe it doesn't always blow in the same place, although in Chicago, we think it blows a lot. Right? But it means that we have to be smart about it. We have to be intelligent about it. We have to build wind turbines that are connected to power networks because the wind is always blowing someplace, right? And then we offset it with solar because when the wind isn't blowing, the sun is shining. And then we need advances in battery storage and other ways to store power, of course. But that's coming. That's new technology. There's also objections that we make because of noise and of birds and of aesthetics. I've been by wind farms, and I have to tell you, I don't notice the noise. And I think that's a lot of hype that's exasperated by fossil fuels who want to keep us from going that way. Check me out. Go by a wind turbine and let me know if that disturbs your peace. I don't think it does. Now, birds. All right, way down on the list of things that kill birds, you'll find wind turbines. Way up there, you'll find cats and skyscrapers and plate glass windows. But still, even with that, we can be smart and eliminate a lot of the problem of killing birds simply by where we put the wind farms. All right? Don't put them in a migratory path. Really, yeah? Probably the biggest objection, though, is our human reluctance to embrace change. We just don't like change. So if we see something new, we don't like it. We object to it. It's not aesthetically pleasing. A lot of it's in what we get used to it. We're used to smokestacks. We're used to power lines. We're used to pipelines. You tell me those are aesthetically pleasing? No. It's what we get used to and what we accept as necessary to life. Now, we can be smarter about how we place it, and we'll get better at how we design them. But man, we're there. Wind right now is an effective generator of electricity across the globe at a very cheap price. Let's look at some numbers. Human civilization last year put 36 gigatons of carbon pollution into our atmosphere. We're doing the same thing this year. 36 gigatons. What's a gigaton? Picture Olympic-sized swimming pools. Now picture 14.5 million of them. That's how much pollution. 14.5 million Olympic-sized pollution. We can't keep going that way. If we go to our resource, our technical resource, draw down the most comprehensive plan ever proposed, the numbers are amazing, right? They rank wind turbines on land as the number 2 solution to our global pollution problem. Number 2. Why? Because if we fully implement land-based wind turbines, we'll reduce nearly 85 gigatons of carbon pollution. 85. Now there's a cost to it. There's no doubt there's a cost to it. You can't build all that without some cost. The cost is $1.23 trillion, $1.25 trillion. Big money, yeah? But here's the thing. There's a savings to it. $1.25 trillion invested, $7.5 trillion is the savings. 7.5. That's quite a return on investment. Let's do the math. It's about 5-fold. We're always going to object to change. Some people will object just because they're uncomfortable with change. Some people will object because they're making a lot of money the way the existing system is. And so coal companies, oil companies, gas companies are going to object, and they're going to make commercials that try and dissuade us. But here's the thing. After the final no comes a yes. And on that yes, the future of the world depends. Those are wise words by Wallace Stevens. After the final no comes a yes. And we have to keep working for that yes. The old Hebrew word for wind is the same thing as breath, which is essential to life. And God's Spirit was essential for us to prepare for the future so that all our children can live. In today's episode, I want to talk about the immense power possibility, the immense pollution savings possibility of rooftop solar. Why is it so huge? Well, it's because the sun puts tremendous energy onto the earth every hour. In fact, in 1 hour across the globe, the sun delivers enough energy that would meet all of humankind's needs in 1 hour for a year. All our needs for a year if we were to capture the energy from 1 hour of sun. Think of the potential. There's 8,760 hours in a year. How many times do we have the opportunity to grab energy for free once we pay for the solar cells? And the good thing is the photovoltaic solar cells have come down dramatically in cost. So dramatically, we couldn't have predicted this just a couple of years ago. And as a result, we're seeing an increase in the number of solar installations that are happening. Much more in Europe and in developing countries, although the U.S. is coming along now, finally, driven by our corporate customers. And so companies like Amazon and Google are covering their facilities with solar panels because the solar panels are so cheap and the electricity then becomes free. You know, in Germany, instead of looking out at downtown Aurora where you don't see a single solar cell, in Germany, every other building would have it. And in fact, in some cities and countries, a new building either has solar cells on its roof or has a green roof. That's the progress that other places are making. We could do this. Why aren't we doing it? Well, one of the things that's holding us back are the utility companies, the huge utility companies, because frankly, they're scared of us not needing them. Because when you and I put rooftop solar on, then we don't need large utility companies anywhere near the amount that we used to. It's proven in developing countries like Southeast Asia and Africa, Bangladesh. Solar panels are being installed at a tremendous rate because you don't need all of the huge transmission line systems to take care of the energy. And those large transmission lines lose a lot of energy just in the resistance of the wire. So if you could capture the power locally on your rooftop, combined with a battery, you would save a lot of energy. And so that scares the mega utility companies, and as a result, they have their lobbyists working on legislators to try and interfere with us going for rooftop solar. And so this is where you need to become a little more politically active and resist the utility companies telling you what you ought to be able to do. We need to tell the lawmakers they work for us, not for utility companies. Rooftop solar. Project Drawdown rates it as the number 10 potential to reduce the climate crisis we have. That's how huge it is. If we were to capture rooftop solar on a global scale, it would take $500 billion to construct all that, but it would save $3.5 trillion. That's seven-fold return. Why wouldn't we want to do that? In fact, the utility companies know that we want to do that, and that's why they're fighting it. If they were progressive, they would help us. They would put the solar panels on our roof and allow us access to them for a small fee. Rooftop solar is one of 100 different answers. It's a huge answer for solving the climate crisis. You know, have you ever been out in nature where you're just overwhelmed by the wonders of nature, by the wonders of God's good creation? I had that happen to me when I was on a Christian Peacemaker trip in Colombia, up in the Andes. And I was so overwhelmed by the pre-dawn sky that I broke out in the hymn, How Great Thou Art. The poet that wrote Psalm 8 had a pretty similar experience, because in Psalm 8 he says, when I look at the wonders that you have wrought, who are humans that you are mindful of, that you care for, yet you have made them little less than a god? The scary thing we face right now is with our God-like powers, we have the ability to destroy God's good creation, to destroy the earth and all its life systems, or we have the ability to live with it, to care for it, to sustain it. Which do you think God is calling us to do? Someday when we are wise, we'll find a way where we do not pollute in order to have energy. And for the sake of our children, that day must come soon. We must act with urgency. Rooftop solar. Why wouldn't we cover our roofs and capture this sun and enjoy the benefits and the wonders of God's creation without destroying it. We can do this. I'm on the grounds of the local high school football field and baseball fields with the high school in the background. Why am I here? Because I want to talk about a huge, huge energy potential. You'll see the numbers, they're startling, but it's geothermal. It's the heat that's in the earth. All right, why are we talking about it? Well, the numbers are staggering. Inside the earth is enough energy that it exceeds what human civilization uses in a year by 100 billion times. That's right, 100 billion times more energy than we possibly can use is in this earth. Why? Well, about 20% of it is from the molten earth that is still not cooled off from when we formed the earth with God's hand 4.7 billion years ago. But most of it is because of the residual radiation that is still going on in the rocks down there. And radiation gives off heat. 100 billion times more than we need. You know, normally when we talk about geothermal, you think about geysers, right? Or you think about volcanoes, and that's all true. Those are sources of geothermal energy. In fact, there's a number of countries across the world that right now today, just because they're close to geothermal, they could be 100% renewable. Why is that important? Well, geothermal, unlike solar and unlike the wind, is constant. Geothermal energy is constant. It doesn't be affected by it's raining right now or by the clouds or whether the wind is blowing. And so if you're looking for a constant source of endless energy, geothermal is a great way to go. So as I was saying, a number of countries right now could be 100% just off of geothermal because they have access to it. So when you think about places that have hot springs or you have volcanic action, you can get to it. But there's also, we're making progress in terms of technology where we can access the geothermal energy in a lot more places. Kind of like the technology they use to frack the oil and the gas that's underneath ground. They can frack and make water reservoirs where we put down water, pick up the heat, turn it into steam, power turbine generators and make electricity. It's possible. We can do this. We have the technology. All we're lacking is the will and the resistance by the oil companies, coal companies, gas companies that don't want us to go there. Here's the thing about geothermal. Once you put in the resource, you don't spend any more money. The heat is free. The thing about coal and oil and gas is once I burn that gallon of oil, I've got to go get more oil. Once I burn that lump of coal, I've got to get more coal. Once I burn that cubic foot of gas, I need more gas. That's why the fossil fuel companies don't want us to go after geothermal. But we can do this. Here's the other thing, and the reason why we're on these grounds. You don't have to go real deep. You don't have to go real expensive to have a lot of the benefits of geothermal here. This high school, as well as the other schools in West Aurora, this past summer have put in geothermal projects. Underneath this field are water coils. They go down into the level where there's constant heat. And it's not that far down, 6 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet. And you circulate water and you pick up that constant source of energy. What does that mean? That means in the winter, you don't have to heat up cold air. That water will heat it up for you. That saves you on how much other energy you got to bring in. It means in the summer, you can reduce how much air conditioning you have to do by going to the coolness that's in the ground. You know, the poet of Genesis, when he was describing the creation story, at every step along the way, at the end of each day, God looked upon what he had created and said, "This is good." In fact, he finally said, "This is very good." Someday when we are wise, we'll open our eyes to see what is possible when we use technology informed by our faith to work in cooperation with creation rather than destroying it. Geothermal. Right now it's rated as a very high potential. It could actually be the game changer. The game changer that makes the future livable for our kids. All it takes us to do is to make our political masters respond to what we demand. It's time to end the era of fossil fuels. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that at all. The only reason to keep on doing it is because you're making a lot of money off of oil and coal and gas, and you don't care about your kids. So we can do it. We can use the wind and the sun and the waves, but more importantly, we can also use what's in the ground. Constant, renewable energy, an energy source beyond what we could ever possibly tap. We can do this. Today I want to revisit this subject of wind turbines, specifically offshore wind turbines. Why? Well, first of all, there's enough wind energy in the world to power human needs more than 40 times over. And so it's important to look at. And the other thing is, why offshore? Well, because most of our major cities are near a shore. That would reduce how much power grid losses occur if you had the wind sourced energy close by. But the other thing is, very simply from physics, wind moves faster over water, especially large bodies of water like the ocean, because it pulls up the heat energy from the oceans, and that makes the wind move faster. Why is that important? Well, because energy is the cube of wind speed. And so 5 miles an hour faster, 10 miles an hour faster is tremendous difference in how much energy can be derived. And there are cities across the globe that are already realizing this. There are countries where the majority of their energy, like Scotland, is coming from wind energy. In fact, there was a day last year where Scotland powered 160% of its energy that day from wind. They had to give the power away to England and other places because they just had too much electrical free from the wind. But it's not just Scotland. We see Scandinavian countries where the majority of their power is coming from offshore wind. Why offshore? Well, first of all, the wind turbines can be a lot bigger offshore. And so one sweep of a wind turbine can power a home for the entire day. All right? Millions of homes are being powered by offshore wind. The United States has been late to this game, but our first offshore wind farm is starting up off the coast of New England. But the big news, the really big news, is the state of New York, off of New York City, is going to build a large wind farm that's going to power millions of homes. And the governors said they found a location where you won't be able to see the wind turbines from shore, which just seems to be a big objection. We don't want to see wind turbines from shore. Although recently the federal government announced they're going to open off all the offshore areas for oil exploration. So we apparently are okay with seeing oil derricks offshore and all the disasters of oil leaks. Are we kidding? It's like the last gasp of a dying industry. They're going to take a terrible toll. You remember the pollution? You remember the devastation that was caused by the offshore oil derricks catching fire and leaking? We don't want to go back there. Wind power, 40 times more than humankind can need, whether it's power from onshore or offshore. But it's a serious sin to neglect looking at offshore wind as a future salvation that our kids, my kids and your kids, my grandkids and your kids can live with. You know, the prophet Ezekiel told an amazing story at a time when everything looked lost for Israel. He said God took the prophet out and surveyed this field of bones and said, "Prophet, can you tell me, will this bones live?" And the prophet said, "Dear God, only you could say that." And God said, "Hear this, I will cause my breath to enter you, and these bones will live." The breath of God is the Spirit of God imparting a wisdom to us that we can live with. God is calling us in this wind to turn away from our greed-based energy that is destroying the earth and turn to renewable energy. Can we do this? Absolutely we can do this. Does it cost? Yeah, the initial investment costs, but after that it's free. How foolish are we not to do this? How foolish are we to continue to engage in dangerous energies instead of energies that sustain the earth? Can we allow God's breath of wisdom to enter our souls? You bet we can. That's where people of faith are called to arise and speak the truth that will save the earth so that our kids and our grandkids will live.